sleeves tonight because it's 25 degrees outside. So, gotta stay warm. And the other co-host, of course, well, Gary.
Yay. Not
Morning
morning
flower,
flower.
Gary.
Not morning flower.
Yes. Gary McCallum, also known as the Murder Hobo. And Mr. Big Deal, Carl Kiesler over there. Everybody knows him.
Hey, everybody.
And our special guest tonight, line developer for East Texas University, the man, Preston DuBose. Welcome to the show.
Howdy, everyone.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. We've been pretty excited actually ever since we booked him, because we're all big fans. So we'll try to not be just big fans and not gush over the setting for the whole episode.
Oh no, gush all you want. It's fine.
Gush is good. Yeah. I'm sure there'll be plenty of that. And because I think ETU is a great success story for Savage Worlds. I mean, when you think about Savage Worlds at first, you think, heroes that are larger than life and, with pulp adventures and very, very opposite of what the pitch for ETU is, which is basically just normal college students investigating the supernatural. But it works so well, and it's came out 2014. I checked the Kickstarter, so 6 years into it. And I was telling the other guys, it's like, I know I think 3 or 4 people right now that are actually playing it, running campaigns. So it's
cool.
It's not Deadlands, but you know what? It's pretty damn close in a way that everybody knows it. Everybody's playing it, so you can't avoid it. And
I think
5 years ago we had Ed Wetterman on the show, but we couldn't get Preston, so we're pretty psyched to have him on the show now.
I think it's super popular because of like what we see in movies and TV and even books. Supernatural. That TV show Supernatural or Buffy, it's all like hits everything in ETU, and it's just like, oh man, I could play something like that in a game, and it's pretty dang cool. So thanks for making it, Preston.
What if I I know some people sometimes mention Scooby-Doo, but I know it kind of bugs some people that it's with Scooby-Doo. Does it bother you that it's compared to that a little bit?
As long as people are having fun, I really don't care what you compare it to. Really, it is about having fun. And so if you want to run a Scooby-Doo game, then, knock yourself out. Really, the intent was to ramp it up over time and to start off at something that felt maybe not Scooby-Doo, but felt somewhat safe. And then as the game progresses, it gets scarier and more deadly. And so by the end, you're definitely, the intent was that you're not feeling like Scooby-Doo. You're feeling more like Supernatural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely look at it that way, not the Scooby-Doo way. I mean, sure, you're gonna have fun around the table and make some jokes and things like that, but it's really about the supernatural and the horror.
Right. It is a legitimate horror game. At least that's the intent. People die. people don't die in Scooby-Doo so much, but people die in ETU a lot.
Oh yeah, I've had players die in my campaigns. I've run it. I was telling Preston before the show, I've run it 3 times with 3 different groups. The plot point campaign, and I've changed it here and there every time, so it's not the same thing. To keep me interested and to also see what the players want to kind of grasp towards. And I definitely had players die. One from a horrific fear check, rolled the worst thing possible, died on the spot. Wow. And everyone was stunned at the table, like, holy crap, this is real now.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the fun, right? Yeah. Is that you may be bumping along thinking that it isn't a big deal, But then somewhere along the way, it strikes you that you can't murder hobo your way through.
Yeah.
That
Wait, what?
there are no healing potions. that your actions have consequences.
Yep.
Yep.
That's what's cool about it, I think, is it's modern horror with there are consequences to every action, and I stress that in a lot of my games that I've run. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the cool aspects. I think for me, you know, being that I'm a massive fat guy, I got to play my inner cheerleader. I was my inner sexy hot cheerleader that I always wanted to be. Right? I mean, that was my favorite part.
That's what gaming's all about, right? You get to let that inner character come out.
True that.
Fantasies. Yeah. You know, back when I first started with Savage Worlds, I mean, it was what, 2007 or 8 or something like that, and I ran into Pine Box, and of course that's the origins of it, and even dates back to D20, I believe, unless you can correct me on that. So what was the step for you guys creating ETU, taking it from Pine Box to now making it about the characters being college students?
Well, you're absolutely right. It did start out as a D20 modern setting, and then we met up with Shane, and he very graciously allowed us to be his very first licensee. And so we became the first Savage Worlds licensee. That was Last Rites of the Blackguard, and then we kind of took it from there. And then eventually we got to a point where we decided D20 Modern wasn't worth the time and effort, and we were going to be Savage Worlds only, and we were. So we started out doing things backwards, and I don't regret it at all. You know, most people put out a big campaign book or a setting book and then write adventures for it so that you have your one big tent pole book, and then you kind of feed things after it. With the Pine Box setting, we organically grew the setting through individual adventures. So we had a basic setting Bible that was free online. Actually, it's still free online to this day. You can go to 12tomidnight.com and read about the Pine Box setting. But beyond that, we grew it organically through Last Rites of the Blackguard, through Bloodlines, through all the subsequent adventures, and we just kind of built it from there. But we decided eventually that, yes, we did need to focus our efforts and put out that campaign book. And to do that, we needed to narrow the scope because Pine Box was too big. And so we did a lot of brainstorming and out of the blue, I don't remember if it was Ed or Jerry Blakemore, but one of them said, well, why don't we do something with the university? And I'm like, university? Since when did Pine Box have a university? They're like, oh yeah, no, East Texas University, and we kind of went on from there. But that's really how it started. Cool. So we brainstormed that. We actually had brainstormed an entirely different campaign that we thought, well, we'll do this ETU thing first, and then maybe we can go back and do this other, where you would be like a sheriff's deputy or a police officer, and the entire campaign would be about all the Pine Box mythos from the perspective of a sheriff's deputy. And they're just kind of building it that way. So we didn't really think that we would be continuing with the ETU, but of course, once we started delving into it, we realized just how rich it could be and how much we could do with just the idea of college students. And so I don't regret never getting around to the sheriff's deputy idea, because we still have plenty to explore on the ETU campus.
That's cool.
Man, I'm looking forward to like the Housewives of ETU edition.
It could happen.
Right?
I don't know.
The
That'd be
Real
sweet.
Housewives of Pine Box.
Right? Maybe we get the grannies or like the old folks home of Pine Box too, or something like that.
Now I could make that. I could do something with that. Maybe start with a convention game. I don't know, but I could work with that.
That sounds like a convention game.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think you're going to have to skip the middle age, because usually that's when people are having kids and they don't do anything. They just come home
that's
after
right.
work and sit around, right?
That's
But
right.
you got the old people. They're always looking for something to do. Those old people always sticking their nose where it don't belong. Am I right?
Yep. All the
Telling you.
retirees that know that weird stuff goes on. Exactly.
Always.
Someone in the comments wrote Bubba Hotep Pine Box Edition.
There you go.
That's it.
That's awesome.
That is it.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, that's
Oh.
perfect.
Yeah.
And
Get off
Elvis,
my-
yeah.
The Get Off My Grass edition.
That's right.
So Pine
The
Box
Golden
slash
Girls.
ETU, was that was a collaboration between you and Ed and Jerry?
And Jerry, the 12 to Midnight was a team that started with 3 individuals, and I was not one of them.
Okay.
I joined though before Last Rites was published.
Okay.
So I still feel like I was there at the beginning. I was there. I did the layout for Last Rites, and I was there from very early on. Anyhow, so then it was 4, and then it grew from 4 to 5 to 6. Actually, I think at one point we had 7 people in the company.
Wow.
But in terms of ETU, it was primarily Ed and I. We did some brainstorming with Jerry, but in terms of who actually wrote it, it came down to Ed and I.
Okay. And was it based on like a campaign you guys have run, or was it just something that you just
Nope.
let's just make
It
this
was
up?
just, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna
Cool.
do this thing. I'll be honest. At one point, we were getting really burnt out. We had been releasing content every month for a few years at that point. We had a pretty grinding schedule for people that all had day jobs and then would come
Yeah.
home and then continue to work on this whole game publishing thing. And so we were getting really burnt out, and we said, okay, well, if we're going to do this, and we're going to, then this is going to be our swan song. We're going to make it the best possible thing we can, and we're going to throw in every single idea that we've been holding on to until just the right moment, because this is it, right? So this is the kitchen sink. And so that first draft of ETU really was the whole everything but the kitchen sink.
Wow.
We had a lot of ideas in there, and going back and looking at it for the second revision, we realized that some worked and some didn't, and we really needed to focus and not just have the shotgun approach.
Right.
So it took a while to refine it to what you saw. Some of it Ed and I refined, and then some of it we absolutely, it was a team effort. We absolutely needed John Goff and Jody and Clint and Shane, of course. The whole Pinnacle team is responsible for the end product, for sure.
Yeah. Very cool. I just saw in the chat that Jody said she edited some of your D20 stuff for Pine
Yes,
Box.
she did. Yes,
Before
did.
she was with
Yes.
Pinnacle, I guess.
Yes.
That's pretty
yes.
awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Jody is awesome.
Yes, she is.
Chucky's asking how much of your real life college experience bled into the setting.
That's really interesting, and it's interesting in that when you do something collaboratively, when you're working with a group of people, it's not just one person's vision, right? I grew up in a small town. It wasn't in East Texas, it was in Central Texas. Ed had a different vision of what Pine Box should be like based on his childhood. Everyone had their own sort of idea of what Pine Box should be like and what ETU would look like based on where they where they went to school or where they grew up. And so it is absolutely a mishmash of everything. I think there was some push and pull about even just how big Pine Box is. What's a small town versus what's a big town? Initially, I would have said, if you're big enough to have a school, then you're not a small town. You're a
Yeah.
city slicker. But we found that balance where it all works, and it does work. It does work. So yes, things of my personal experience that ended up in ETU, man, there's probably so many little things I can't even grasp at one thing in particular. The basketball arena. That is something that I envision based on the basketball arena at University of Texas.
So it's kind of in the ground kind of
Right.
deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like you walk in and then you step
And then
down.
you go
into
down.
it.
Right. The
Yeah.
bleachers are all down.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, the halls are like almost like tunnels, I guess you could say.
Right. Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
Nice. What about the characters in Pine Box and ETU? Are some of them based on you guys, like Jackson and?
So yes, in a way. So Jackson is absolutely Ed, and Glenn Mack absolutely is Jerry. Um, they had developed those what they call iconic characters for 12 to Midnight, but they were always sort of associated with the university. Jackson was always a grad student, and Glenn Mack was always a professor, even before ETU existed. So they were always the characters that they played. I came in after those iconics were set, and so I didn't ever really have one, and that's perfectly fine. I don't need one. I get to play with all the others, right? Because by the time ETU came out, we have all of these archetypes, like the cheerleader, and the rodeo queen, which I might have a story about the rodeo queen later. Although, man, we're already 30 minutes in. I don't know if I'm going to get to that or not. But yes. So to directly answer your question, yes.
Good.
Very cool.
Oh, that's cool. Someone said that. Well, Darren said Coach DuBose.
yeah. Ed or Jerry put that in. Personally, I wouldn't have slipped my own name in the game, but it was one of those things that it got put in and it was made official. So okay, now I have to live with it.
That's fantastic.
What's next for ETU? Because even 6-7 years later, it's still supported. Recently, there was a one sheet, right? To go for school, right?
Yep. So yes, but we are not done with ETU. I know 6 years seems like it's been, well, I mean, it's been 6 years. We have put out Pine Box Perils, so some additional foes and then adventures to go along with it. We announced Study Abroad a few years ago, and it was actually turned in, the pandemic slowed everything down, right? But it is in Pinnacle's hands. The problem, which is the good problem, is that they have just too many awesome things to release, and we have to wait our turn. So it'll come out when it comes out. But in the meantime, we get amazing things like Savage Pathfinder. So I'm not complaining in the least.
Right. Study Abroad, is that a 32 pager or it's
no,
a
that'll
book?
be a full book. It'll be another full length book, just like ETU and Degrees of Horror. It is, for those of you who hadn't heard about it, the idea is that, of course, you can spend one of your semesters in a study abroad environment. So we picked 4 different locations, and we tried to get writers from those different countries to write about their country and their settings. So they still have the supernatural kind of feel. Some of them have, all of them have a location and then Savage Tales for that location, right?
Okay.
In some cases, they're almost like a mini plot point with a beginning, middle, and end. And then in other cases, it's just you can play them in any order, and it's more of a sandbox type environment. So you can really pick and choose.
Nice.
So 4 different locations. I sure
Which
hope
ones?
I can get it right. Yes, let's see. Italy, Poland, United Kingdom, and Costa Rica.
Okay.
Those are the 4.
Cool.
Very
So,
cool.
Europe, Costa Rica, I would have loved to have done somewhere like China or Korea. I would have loved to have done somewhere in Africa, but
Scandinavia would have been
right.
cool
I
too.
mean, we were trying to be authentic and to get writers from those locations to do the writing. Now, it ended up that I ended up writing Costa Rica, but it was in consultation with a friend of mine who lives there, and so I was able to tap her knowledge for that to make it as real as I could,
Very cool.
considering that it's ETU.
Could you make characters? That sounds to me like 4 mini campaigns that I want to run.
Yeah.
Could you make
Could.
characters for each place and say, okay, we're going to your characters are going to this place? And
I mean, if you want to, I don't see
Yeah.
why you couldn't.
Cool.
I created at the front of the book a number of extras
Okay.
that are your classmates, because you from ETU are going to Costa Rica, but you're
Right.
going to be surrounded not by other people from ETU, but maybe someone from South Korea, maybe someone from Russia, maybe someone from Japan. And so I picked up I want to say 3 extras from each continent. Man, it's been a while. I'd have to look at that. It was a bunch of characters. It was a
Yeah.
bunch of characters that you could pick and choose, and just a couple sentences about each one and something that made them unique, maybe a hindrance or something of that nature that made them unique. And you can just pick and choose who you want the classmates to be.
That's cool. That's pretty
Very
cool.
So, out of curiosity, what would be the? So, I'm just reading one of the questions that came up here, and I started the Costa Rican jungle and stuff like that. So, if you were to study abroad in Costa Rica, I guess that's what you would be doing. You'd be going and studying Aztec runes, and then dealing with Mayan spirits and sort of cool things like that, right? That would be pretty slick.
You would be in a particular campus out on the edge of the rainforest. And so you're
Nice.
pretty isolated. You're like 20, 30 minutes from the nearest little town, and it's a pretty small town. So even though you're in a pretty small country, you're still isolated. And but then yes, you go on day trips to a volcano, a live volcano, to the ocean, because it's really not that far to the ocean. So yes, you get to travel around Costa Rica and explore different areas within that.
Now, what do
as
you
well
do
as the
when
jungle.
what do you do when you go to Italy? You just like eat a lot of pizza and stuff, don't you? I'm not aware of any sort of Italian. What do we
Yes.
got for
No,
Italian
there's
scary
nothing
monsters?
that would be right. Yeah. Yep. You're in Turin, is in the Shroud of Turin. And so there's a lot of history to mine there.
Wow.
Well, yeah,
Nice.
a lot of
Is there-
history in Italy
Man.
and the UK too. So
Yep.
I want to run that so bad.
Yeah, you probably will want to run all 4. I mean,
Oh
there's
my
not a bad
gosh.
one in the bunch.
Oh
is
my
there
gosh.
is there going to be like any stretch goals when this comes out? Like maybe North Korea is a place to go to. You could do a
Honestly,
one-shot.
what we've written is what we've written. I mean, it's a complete book,
Ah.
so we can't really pad out the book. If there's enough interest, though, we could do another. I would love to revisit it and do another set of countries. I think that would be way cool.
That's cool.
You could
I
study
gotta-
abroad. Go ahead, Carl.
No, I have a question. So you guys worked on ETU and it's totally done. You got all your books, you got them shipped to you and you're looking at them. Have you guys run, you, Ed, Jerry, have you guys run ETU since you got the books and used any of it?
I haven't. I
You
have not
haven't?
run a
Okay.
complete campaign.
Okay. Played in it?
I at conventions, yes.
Okay.
Here's the dirty secret. My local gaming group, we do play some Savage Worlds, but the main campaign was actually a Pathfinder campaign that lasted 5 years.
Cool.
Whoa.
5-year
Wow.
campaign.
Wow.
So we just finished Iron Gods this past year.
Now, when you play Rifts, Preston, when you play Savage Worlds, you play Rifts, right? Because it's the second best setting ever.
No comment.
Yeah, I was just hoping you'd say yes, and then Eric would.
I thought he was gonna say 50 fathoms.
Well, that's the best setting ever, and followed by ETU, and then maybe Rifts because you're on the show. But when you're not here, it's Rifts and then ETU.
It's right. Gotcha. Okay.
Wow, 5 years in a campaign. That's good.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
Before
what level
the show
did
you were?
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Gary.
What level did you back Savage Pathfinder at, Mister?
At the moment, the GM level, I have not gone in for the box set, but I'll probably upgrade before Kickstarter closes.
Nice.
Yep. Because we did Iron Gods. I have not done Rise of the Rune Lord, so it'll be new to me.
Oh yeah, brand new campaign.
Yep.
I was just saying before the show, you were telling us something that you can talk about. And,
yeah.
It's the ETU legacy. That sounds exciting. So if people are close to Austin and want to go to Chupa next time that it's live, I think they should. I think you're going to give them a good reason to, right?
I sure hope so. So we're working on some other things that I can't talk about. They're also full-size books. So in addition to Pinebox Perils, which are already out, and then Study Abroad, which is forthcoming, we do have a couple other projects in the works that I can't say anything more about just yet, but they're in the works. Then in addition to that, Ed and I had been talking this time last year, actually, and we were lamenting that we had really run poor old Chickens in the Mist and Red Necromancer into the ground when it comes to convention games. Like, everyone loves to play it because they're fun games, but after you've played Chickens in the Mist a couple times, the surprise is gone, and it was time for something new. So we decided that we were going to write some new convention games. So we outlined out a 3-part convention game called Pinebox Legacies. Part 1 is set in the 1880s at Pinebox Women's College. Part 2 takes place in the 1920s in Southeast Texas Institute. And then part 3 takes place in the early 1980s after the name had been changed to East Texas University. So the cool thing is, so these are convention games. If you play in game 1 and then you sign up to play game 2, you get what we're calling a legacy card. And so even though it's a generation later for game 2, you are a descendant of someone from game 1. And so you have that legacy, which might be a revolver that the person carried that carries some special bonus, or it could be a journal diary that one of the characters wrote that has information that's going to be pertinent, because this is a 3-part generational story. And so having that journal may help you solve the mystery in part 2. And then if you play part 2 and sign up for part 3, then you might start part 3 with 2 legacy cards. So we think that's really cool. We play tested it last February with the intention of debuting it at ChupacabraCon last year. Unfortunately, quarantine hit and we weren't able to do that. So I don't know when we will be able to debut it. We'd really prefer to do it in person instead of in a virtual environment, but maybe we'll have to revisit that depending on when things ease up around here. But we think it's a really cool idea. The playtest went fantastic. I'll tell you one of the neat things, since they just did the Pinnacle Twitch an hour ago, going over the chase rules that they have for Pathfinder. We had a chase in each of these 3 parts. The absolute hilarious yet fun thing in the 3rd one is that it is a roller derby. And so we're using the chase rules to play through a roller derby to see if, the ETU team beats the competing team, the visiting team. And then, of course, there's all sorts of supernatural stuff going on in the background while this roller derby is going on. So it was absolutely a hoot. It was a great time. Disco ball. I mean, the whole thing. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's something that you'll be able to look forward to. Now, so it's all ETU themed, ETU related. The time frames are such that it won't interfere with what you having going on in your present day game if you set it in present day. I know some people prefer to set it in the 80s or 90s. But the intent is that this won't interfere with the other campaign that you have going on.
That's cool. I love that idea for the legacy items. That is so cool.
Yep.
Keeps those players wanting to come back.
That's the idea. Yep.
See what Chucky wrote? He's like, pair that with Wise Guys. I think you should do an East Wise Guys University, Lamoureux. That'll be next.
Or study in Vegas. Yeah,
right?
There you go.
Yeah, you're not studying in Vegas.
There's no studying going on there. That's
studying them cards.
Right. How to hustle.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that movie, I think 21, those MIT students that go to Vegas
there you
count
go.
cards.
Yeah.
That sounds like a spring break trip.
There you go.
Yeah. I think I want to bring up Gary here because he's ready to move on to a different campaign, and he wants to separate himself from all the ALF games that he likes to play. And he likes ETU a lot, but he's not really. Mysteries isn't really his thing. So Gary, you can ask him some tips how to run a good mystery.
First
Putting
off,
you on the spot.
Way to put him on the
don't worry,
spot
buddy.
there.
I got this.
Yeah.
I'll take the show from here. You guys can go, take a smoke break. I'll be chatting it up with Preston.
Oh, I'm supposed to stay. Okay.
Yeah, no, you got to stay. we don't need them anymore, Preston. It's just me and you. Just put your hand over your screen, kind of a thing. Pretend they're not here. If you hear anything, just ignore them.
Got it.
All right.
First, you buy ETU.
I want to play some ETU. I got it. I got my box set kicking over there right now. It has yet to be cracked because, like Eric says, my genre is fantasy. It's what I've played D&D for years, right? That's what I do. If I've played ETU, I did I think probably almost about a year doing Fighting Ravens campaign with the guy Jamie Pearson, and he ran it wonderfully. It was amazing. It was super cool. But if somebody is coming into ETU and they want to get started, where's the good starting point? Is there a plot point campaign that you recommend? Maybe like a one sheet or something like that? Where we're going to pick the ball up and start running?
So there is a plot point campaign, and I do recommend running it because I wrote it and I think it's awesome. So yes, I do recommend that. But if you're trying to sell your players on the idea, I would recommend running the free one sheet called Red Necromancer, because I think that gives you a good feel for what the setting is about. I would suggest Chickens in the Mist, but quite honestly, that's a TPK machine, and you're going to be more likely to kill the characters. Red Necromancer, they have a fair shot at surviving. Just to give you the quick rundown, the spoiler-filled rundown on what it's about. The students encounter their favorite waitress who's lamenting that her Meemaw out at the trailer park hasn't been acting right lately, and she's really worried about her. And the students go out to check on her and come to find out she's a zombie now. And the whole mystery is that the trailer park manager has gained these necromantic powers to raise the dead. And so he's keeping all of these trailer park retirees alive to cash in their social security checks. And so he's a Red Necromancer.
Nice.
And
it's amazing.
That's
so great.
that's the mystery in a nutshell. You can play it in one sitting. I mean, it's not a big commitment, but that will give your players a real feel for what the campaign is about.
Yeah.
There's no need for them to learn how to cast rituals or any of that. They can just play straight characters. They can play the archetypes. And then once you sell them on Red Necromancer and the setting, then absolutely, yeah, lead in with the plot point campaign. The first adventure in the campaign is intended to be the whole campaign opener. So that will introduce characters together, bring them together. They can be strangers. It's the whole, you meet in a tavern type thing. Well, you meet at freshman orientation. And so
Yeah.
they're brought together at freshman orientation. They can be total strangers, but by the end of that orientation, they'll be a cohesive group.
Yeah, that is the one that I play. See, I haven't read it, but I've played it because I was playing the cheerleader. Our orientation took place in the gymnasium, at which point I think there was a fire that broke out, but we ended up in sort of the basement of the gymnasium kind of a thing, and there was sort of like this werewolf thing that was attacking us, and it just went from there. We didn't get to fight it. Like, it came in and it sort of just snuck out a window and took off. Back to Red Necromancer. Here's where my confusion comes with drawing a mystery. Like, how do I roll that out? When I mean, I can read the adventure, but the subtle parts, like having the players leading them to the trailer park. Once they get there, how do I lead them into finding some information on this old man, laying out the clues in front of people so that they will pick them up without them looking at, because we all know players, sometimes they ain't the best, they're the brightest sticks in the pile.
Yep.
And they can pick up something and make their own idea up on it, and before you know it, they're off in Vegas playing cards in Wise Guys.
And if they do, as long as they're having fun, then so be it, right? I did run it at a convention where one person wanted to lone wolf off and do his own thing while the rest of the group was doing their thing. And as a GM, that's always difficult to run, right? When you're trying to make sure that everyone stays engaged, but one person's wanting to run off and do his own thing. So yeah, sometimes players do make things tricky for us, right? But as far as running a mystery, I think the key is having characters who have their own agency and are going to do their own thing regardless of what the players do, right? When you know the bad guy's motivations and you know what the whole setup is, you know how he'll act. And if it turns out that the players don't figure it out and turn around and leave, well, guess what? The bad guy is going to do what bad guy does. Maybe bad guy gets concerned about these kids snooping around and seeing something they shouldn't, and he sends zombies after them. Actions have consequences. That's the whole deal in ETU, right? Actions have consequences. You can't murder hobo through campus with a shotgun. So if by the same token, if they fail to act, if they fail to solve the mystery, bad things continue to happen, and those bad things can pile up to the point where it's impossible for the players to ignore.
Gotcha. It's kind of the sort of the thing that holds me back, is I'm not sure how to sort of subtly lead them in the direction I want them to go, because it's supposed to be a mystery, and as a game master, I don't want to just say, hey, let's go to this trailer park and check it out kind of a thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Whereas when you're playing fantasy which is relatively easy, you're like, some guy comes up and says, hey, go to town B over here and, kick the crap out of 10 goblins, and he's got a yellow exclamation mark over his head. Sometimes it can be pretty straightforward. You have a direct kind of a deal, but like you say, there's so many consequences for your actions inside of ETU that you just can't just start going and slaughtering people. Like, the cabbage vendor on the outskirts of town you're trying to pump for information, you just can't kick his ass in ETU because there's things to do. So,
well, I think you can still hint as stuff as the GM, like he explained. It's a friend, a waitress who says that her grandma or Mima's not doing well.
Right.
So you might just turn to the players and say, would you like to go meet her Mima? And
Right.
then
Or
players will-
I mean, the waitress can come out and say, "Hey, I could really use some help. I'm at wit's end. You're always super nice to me when you come in here. I just, my truck broke down. I don't have any way of getting out there. Can you give me a ride?" And so, yes, it's a little bit on rails, but at that point, I think the key to running a mystery is making the players think that it's their idea all along, which does require a certain amount of subtlety, right? But if the choices presented to them are the logical choices, then they'll hopefully take the bait, do the logical thing, and they'll feel like it was their idea, even though it was what you wanted to do.
Man, I feel like what you just said was a light bulb moment in the idea of making the players think that because this is the thing, like when we were on one of the adventures that we went on, we had to do a thing like we needed parts or blood from people or maybe some bone marrow or something, and I don't remember what it is, but we had to get blood from people. And so we set up like not a kissing booth or a blood drive or something like that, right? But when Pearson was doing it, now that you've said that, it's almost as if he presented us with an idea. Okay, you guys are gonna, this is a werewolf. You're gonna have to figure out how to take him out. But it didn't seem to matter how we decided we were going to take him out, be it, cold iron, or we were going to use garlic, or, you know what I mean, set a trap for him. It was always the right idea, which to me was like, man, I don't know how he's running this adventure, because if we got three choices and they're all right, something's not right here.
That's pretty cool, because when I ran my 3 different groups through each set of degrees of horror, they ran through some of the same Savage Tales or one sheets, and it's interesting to see how one group comes up and totally different method or way of defeating this creature that I didn't point them in that direction. They just came up with it. But yeah, Preston's right. If you just give them like the perfect scenario and they realize, hey, this is a horror game, we're playing heroic kids that are trying to fight this stuff. And I think that's kind of like ingrained in the first session of Degrees of Horror, the be a zebra type thing. You're not a zebra. You're the heroes of this story. The zebras are over there. You're not trying to hide and mingle with the crowd. You're playing the characters. This is what I told my players anyways. You're playing the characters that want to be heroic. The ones that aren't, maybe not make that character. Maybe make the one that wants to push forward, and sure, they could be yellow, but maybe there's something in them that push comes to shove, they're going to help out anyways. They just have to,
Oh, that's the thing. You need buy-in from the players to play ETU. You have to be ready to be curious and want to investigate. Right. If you see something scary and you say, "Oh, my character wouldn't get involved. I'll just stay in the dorm," then it's not going to work.
You're not a hero.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you got to step up.
Yeah. And I think all my players that ran through my different groups, they all were great. They all were like, yeah, we want to discover what's going on and everything. So
awesome.
Yeah, I think I got really lucky with the guy that was running it for us, Jamie Pearson, because every adventure was just phenomenal, and it was more like it was. I don't even really know how to explain it. It was so unique playing East Texas University, because you're not just going out with the idea that you're going to go kill the big bad evil guy. It was more about, here's a problem. You guys got to figure out how to solve it. So some of us would go look on the internet and do a thing. Some of us would go to the library and research books and stuff like that. And it just didn't seem to matter. Like he managed to take this pile of goop and turn it into it like a beautiful omelet when it was all said and done, and everything just came together in a like a completely wicked culmination. And I think that's the other fun part about it too, is like after all of this hard work and role play that we did, because maybe that's what it was more role play than just sort of hack and slash, not from you're not going from scene to scene just beating things up all the time. Yeah. But it always came down to we always figured out, or had enough clues to figure out how we could attack the end guy. Because there's no magic or anything like that. So if you're fighting a werewolf, how do you kill him if you can only take him out with silver or whatever? So we actually had to get silver stuff. We're sneaking through people's houses trying to get my mom's silver stuff. Hey, can you send me this? And then then we got to find somebody to blacksmith it, and it was just awesome. And then when it all comes together, we finally got the one weapon to take out the werewolf, and then we got to do some combat at the end of it. I loved it. It was so good. It was so fun. I think my character's name was Susie Lou. Funny story, right at the end, she was jealous of this other guy. And they played me. My own players played me because she was in love with this guy. And this guy was like, there was another person that was like, hey, we're going to make her jealous and stuff like that. I ended up hitting her with a car and driving her into the wall. And Susie Lou ended up in jail for the rest of her life. And that's how her campaign came to an end. Because I in a jealous rage, I drove over the other girl that was in the party with my car.
Harsh.
Yeah, well, that's what you get for messing with me. Susie Lou's not taking it. I'm the cheerleader, man. I'm the leader of this story.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was awesome. I loved it.
That's great.
And just playing it made me want to play, or made me want to run it, because it was just, I guess it was that different from what I was used to. It's amazing. I call it, I always say it's a sleeper setting. You look at it and you're like, okay, what is this? And then as soon as you've played it or watched somebody play it, it's just like, boom, you're like, wow, this is super cool. I loved it.
I think that really does help. I remember during the Kickstarter, some people were like, why would I want to play in the real world? I live in the real world. I game to get away from it. And I get it. And I wasn't mad, because not everyone likes every setting. But, at the time I wrote it and I felt like, you don't know what you're missing. And I think that maybe some of the reason that ETU does have legs is because it's a slow burn, right? Some people, it clicked right away. If you were a Buffy fan or a Supernatural fan, you got it right away. Others needed to see it. They needed to see the Wild Card show, which, man, they did an outstanding job with it.
Fantastic.
So it's something that I think people are continuing to get exposed to for the first time, discovering it all new to them. And so it's just continuing to get an audience over time.
I got to tell you, there's not lack of anything to do if you're a GM when you buy the ETU books or box set. I mean, there's all kinds of Savage Tales. There's a huge plot point. So you can integrate those Savage Tales into the plot point, and all the one sheets. I mean, there's so many free one sheets.
There's a lot of one sheets.
I mean, Scavenger Hunt is amazing. Scavenger Hunt and Redneck Romancer. That's just two of them. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah. Brouhaha.
Yeah. Pine Box Perils is out. I mean, there's all kinds of adventures that you could just throw at your players and have fun. It's really that's rich setting.
Another great part of it too is you're not this sword wielding, ass kicking, spell casting person. You're the fat nerd with the computer. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when it comes down to that werewolf, he starts attacking you. I'm going to hit him with my really expensive high performance laptop because it's all I got. Or you're
Shovel of Doom.
Right, that was my Chickens in the Mist guy. Shovel of Doom. I had like one of those little camping shovels, and I didn't actually use it on the chicken. Here's another murder hobo story for you. I used it on the guy running because these massive chickens come out. I'm like, this is bullshit, and I'm out of here. And I started running with this other guy, and in order for my fat ass to get away, I hit him in the face with a shovel and just kept going.
Yikes!
The chickens still got me. They still got me.
Okay, all right. Karma.
I always want to run a ETU set in the 80s. That's what, and I ran a con game last year with that, but I want to do a campaign where it's just like set in the 80s because the name changed, like you said, like in the 80s, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that would be a cool concept, like bring it back to the 80s.
Yeah, a lot of people are concerned about cell phone use and cell phones breaking the game or ruining the game. And I understand that from a research point of view, when you can get on your phone and research things real quick, maybe that can be perceived as making things too easy. But I think people don't appreciate how bad signal strength is in East Texas, and that it really does come and go. And then B, I think it just changes the game. It doesn't necessarily make it easier or harder. It's just different.
You
But yeah,
know,
I mean, there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong
Oh.
with running something in the 80s or the 90s either.
Well, I think the thing with cell phones, and I've had that kind of fear about it, and I guess that's why I put Wise Guys in the 90s, where it was big phones like this that you know,
Right, the
but
brick.
yeah, the brick. But the thing is that I think you have to remember as a GM is that you're, at the end of the day, you're the one who controls the flow of information. Really, you decide the information they find. And if people say, well, it's easy to look it up and Google it and things like that, well, some things are, but a lot of things you need some skills to find out what you're looking for.
Or if
And
there's like
sometimes you don't even know what you're looking for. So, you know,
Yeah, like
And
if there's like-
especially
ask
something
your
like
aunt or grandpa to,
Yeah.
to look something up. He won't be able to, because he has like D4-2 and not familiar with the internet. So
yeah. And something like ETU, I mean, if you're looking up occult information, the odds of finding accurate information online are really low, right? I mean, the signal to noise ratio has got to be like 100 to 1 or 1 to 100.
Yeah.
And then also with historical things, if you're trying to find out something that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago, maybe that newspaper has been digitized, but it may not be text searchable. It may just be one giant image, right? So either it may not be online at all, or if it is, it may not be easily discoverable. So I think
Yeah.
there are ways to handle that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of the same thing. Like in my games, like if they were looking for a ritual or something, it was never on the internet.
Sure,
They
no,
have to go to a
yeah.
library, you know, this old
Yeah,
dusty
yep.
back of the library, the special section, and it's in some book that hasn't been touched in probably 30 years, you know.
Right.
And that's how they find it. It's not.
You know, you guys have the added bonus of hashtag fake news, right?
Yes.
You know,
Well, and
'cause
that's
if-
my point. I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because that's been my point all along about, well, you know, they can just pull a cell phone out and take video of this zombie or this werewolf or whatever, and that breaks the you know, the realism of the game. But I mean, get on YouTube now and search UFO videos. I mean, there's plenty of things. There's plenty of found footage out there of Bigfoot and UFOs and various creatures, you know, dwarves, elves, whatever, out there right now. And except for a few conspiracy theorists, for the most part, people don't even believe what they see. And so there's absolutely no reason to think that if ETU students did take video of a zombie or a werewolf, that the response wouldn't be something to the effect of, you know, lame effects, dude, I could have done better. You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, let them take all the video they want. I mean, it's not gonna change anyone's minds.
My last campaign, I doubled down on that. I actually had an NPC come in that he knew weird stuff was happening around here, and he was like these real low budget camera trying to make his own TV show type deal. He was a real fast talker and stuff. And he came in and he's like, hey, I just want to follow you guys around and film what you're doing. And the group was like, hell no. No, we're fighting all kinds of weird stuff, except like one player was like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could be a star. And whenever he basically had to convince her, you know. No. So I doubled down. I threw it right at him. And they were like, nope.
No,
get away from us.
You know what else is cool too? When you're in the woods hiding from that crazed lumberjack, headless lumberjack guy, and you know you're crouched down behind a bush, and all of a sudden, you know that everybody like the hey look at me beep, your phone goes off because every 5 minutes it's like dong, you got a notification. Yep. Right. You know, your mom calls you and you're squatting in a bush, you're like about to get chopped down. But
right.
You know,
overprotective parents.
Yeah.
The fake news stuff is so funny because, you know, you try and get rid of bunions on your feet, and I don't know if I'm smearing my feet in Vaseline or if I'm putting apples and oranges sliced up in my socks and going to bed. Like, you just don't know what's going on anymore. That's too sweet. You know, the other cool thing about ETU too, and this is, I don't know if we're going to end it on this note here, but I got a question for you. So Usually when I look at a setting that I want to play, and Jody had mentioned this earlier, I do this thing like, does it have legs? And this setting absolutely has legs because there is so many weird hidden creatures and old myths and, you know, zombies and werewolves and all this other stuff. But if somebody were to want to create their own adventure or write their own mystery, have you got any tips and pointers for doing that? Like, you know, let's say I want to bring Frankenstein into it, and in the trailer park, instead of the redneck wizard or necromancer guy, you got some guys trying to put Frankenstein back together. And you know, how would you go about creating something like that adventure? You got tips for doing that? You're the master.
Hey, the master, I don't know about that. The approach that I do take, though, is as over the top or weird or wild as an idea may be, play it straight. People will find the absurd on their own. You don't have to point out the absurd to them, but when you play it straight, I think that they'll take it seriously. And I'm not sure if I'm articulating this very well, but that's generally the approach that I take. Sure, there's a hogzilla out in the woods, but you know, I'm not playing it as a joke. I'm playing it as there's a hogzilla out in the woods, and you better watch out, or you know, you're going to get trampled to death. There's this headless lumberjack out there, and yeah, we've all seen Friday the 13th, but guess what? You know, you could still die. So I feel like I'm not articulating it well, but I think that you run a danger of turning it into a horror comedy if you don't play it straight. Like there's a real absurdity in the idea of fighting a headless lumberjack as a college student in redneck East Texas, and you know, and right. I mean, these are absurd situations. How many hauntings, how many ghosts, how many creatures can you have in the one little town without tripping over them, right? The whole thing is absurd, but you play it straight. You play it like, you know, this is life or death. And I think if you play it straight, the players will. At least that's the hope.
It
No,
makes
I
sense.
just
I think what works great with horror too is that, well, like you said, you play it straight, but chances are the players are going to make jokes anyway. But to go from comedy straight to something shocking, horror, it has larger effect than, you know, being always the same tone or something like that. So it's the way I interpret what you just talked about by playing straight is that as the GM, you should be the one that brings them back down to reality and makes them, you know, okay, enough fooling around now, you know, that Hogzilla is gonna really mess you up.
Right.
And NPCs are great for that. You just start killing them off. Like, especially really like NPCs that they really care about. You know, have them hurt or maimed or something happens to them. Something happens that it hits home for them. They're just like, oh wow, okay, this is not a joke. You know.
Right. We really, you know, I don't care if my buddy here loses his character. We'll just roll up another one. But that NPC that, you know, that I went on a date with, that girl is going to live no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I know one thing for sure. If me and Eric Lamoureux were in the bush together and something started coming after us, I know who's walking out of the bush.
Someone's getting the shovel and someone's walking
Shovel of Doom becomes his reality.
You better make sure to grab me because I'm sure I run faster than you.
So I know we're probably about running out of time. I did want to tell one quick story if we have a couple more minutes. So the other project that I've taken on, and like I said, some things are secret, some things we can't announce until it's a done deal. The other, and then some things we can, like Pine Box Legacies. The other thing that I worked on that's really not a secret, I just don't know what the final form will take, is I wrote an anthology of 4 interconnected ETU stories. So they all center around one study group, and they all intersect. They're all individual stories, but they all intersect at one night at the pizza barn. And so that's the theme, is a night at the pizza barn. So it's 4 different mysteries, 4 different stories by 4 different members of this study group. And I really started out from scratch. I really had no idea what characters were going to be, what the adventures were going to be. I had an idea about for one, and the others I just kind of made it up as I went along. But somewhere along the way, I decided that I was going to include one of the archetypes that's in the ETU book, the Rodeo Queen. And the reason I decided to do that was the artwork for the archetypes was one of the first things that was developed for ETU. Like before it ever went to layout, we had these archetype pieces of art. And I saw the Rodeo Queen and I was like, this is so hokey. I mean, really? Someone wearing chaps? Does who thinks that this girl's going to be walking around campus wearing, a student wearing cowboy chaps? I went to, 4 years at a university and never saw someone walking around wearing cowboy chaps in class. This is ridiculous. So ETU came, but we ran with it. ETU came out, and I thought, this character is really bugging me. I've got to turn it around. I've got to come up with a logical reason why someone would walk around campus wearing those chaps. And I did. And of the people that have read the anthology, that's their favorite story.
Nice.
And so to me, that was kind of a personal victory, that I turned something that I really didn't like into something that I really do like now and I'm really proud of.
Wow.
So, I wrote those stories for fun. I really never wrote them with the intention of like it being a thing. But of course, I went through the effort of writing. I do want other people to read them. I don't know what that form that will take. Maybe next Kickstarter we do, it'll be a stretch goal or something like that. We'll release it as a Kindle file or say. Yeah, I really don't know what the end product will look like, but I do hope that at some point I'm able to release that and let everyone read it, because it was a lot of fun to write.
I'll give you my email later.
Hey, and you know what? You got a really good voice. Maybe you should do an audiobook for Gary. Gary's in his truck all day.
If it's longer than
to read,
right? If it's longer than 72 pages, I'm out. I'm just saying. Preston, do you live in Texas? Is
I
that
do.
where you're? Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question for you now. I've heard, because you always hear assless chaps, but I guess all chaps are assless.
It's true.
Do they make frontless chaps? I mean,
They do not make that. To my knowledge, no. That would just be, I don't know, pants.
yeah. Suddenly, I'm just super disappointed.
Yeah. No, I mean, the idea of the chaps is to protect the front of your legs as you're riding. Yeah.
Oh. That doesn't explain why I see them in so many of the movies that I watch.
You watch the wrong movies. Or the right ones. I don't know. I won't
wrong
judge.
type of movies.
Those BitTorrent movies you're watching.
Hey, don't shade me.
He's got no excuses. He lives right next to Calgary. That's not very far. That's the Canadian Cowboys. So he should know about that stuff.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. It was awesome to meet you finally after all these years.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. I've had a hoot. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, I
Yeah,
super
Yeah, and
appreciate
if you
you.
don't have enough of, you do too, huh? Yeah, now you got you hooked up with the mysteries and things like that.
It's
If you I haven't had enough of ETU, just in about 45 minutes, the wild cards are going to run.
Yes.
Well, they're going to play one of their ETU games. I think that's their
Scene or
final
something,
goodbye
or
there.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's watching the show with them. So that should give you a good idea of what it's about.
So,
All right.
Yeah, I
Yep,
didn't
they
know where
did
to
a
pick it up
great
from.
job. Yep.
I tell you, I am more excited for ETU now than I was an hour ago, which is awesome. 'Cause
Okay,
I'm
well then I did my
really-
job.
Yeah.
If you felt worse about it, then I would just have to hang it up.
I had a
I'd have
great
to hand it
time.
all off to Ed.
Yeah, I had a great time playing in it. It's on my list of things to run. Like I think next I'm going to do Last Parsec Iron Gate because it's finite. I can get through that adventure. That's going to ease me back into my deal. And then I'm thinking maybe long-term East Texas University was on the list because I don't know if I'll be able to get my box set for Rifts. Is from they shipped it last March and it's still in America because the border's
Yikes.
closed. I can't pick it up. So
Yikes.
yeah, I'm seriously sliding ETU in there. I think I might actually
Okay.
have Eric play just so I can kill him in a funny way with Hogzilla.
oh, thanks, Gary. I don't want to play.
No, you're not invited, Mr. Big Deal. Listen, you'd be too busy making sure all your servants wash your yacht there, Mr. Big Deal.
I would make time for you.
Spending your millions from the Savage Pathfinder Kickstarter and
Yeah.
living in Bali or some place like that. Yeah.
I would make time for you, Gary.
Aw, that's sweet. Thanks, pal.
All right, so stay keep an eye open, maybe even both eyes open for a Kickstarter for study abroad and whatever things that are on its way for ETU. And if you're going to Chupa, make sure to sign up for that awesome legacy game there, 3 games. And
Awesome.
Savage Pathfinder, of course, right now going on, going strong. So if in case you've been living under a rock, you don't know that's going on, and now go check him out on Kickstarter. Still over 2 weeks left for that campaign, so get on it.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again for coming, and
Thanks, Preston.
we see
Okay,
you again
yep.
soon, man.
All right.
All right.
Say
Thank
goodbye,
you, everyone.
everybody. Adios.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.